Welcome to another edition of E.W. Jackson for America. Great to be with you again today. Lots to talk about. We are now 20 days from the election. I believe it's 20 as of today. So, folks, we are down to the wire. The wire. And I want to make a prediction. And since I'm doing this on tape and it's videos, you can go back and check it. I predict that Donald Trump will win the presidency by an overall vote of 4 points, 52 to 48, that he will win the presidency 52 to 48 and upward. I think he may do better than that. I'll tell you why I've come to this conclusion. It's one of the issues I want to talk about. And I think it has to do with Bret Baier, the Bret Baier interview. I didn't watch the interview, but I did read about it and how it went. None of it surprised me, by the way. But all of this, the Bret Baier interview and the general slide that she seems to be taking, the decline in the sense of momentum, the desperation that you see among Democrats, that they're just reaching out to the black men. I got to promise things to black men. I mean, as if that's constitutional or legal. I mean, you're going to give certain things to certain people based upon their race and their gender. I mean, it's preposterous. But of course, that's the way Democrats play politics anyway. It is all about buying votes. It is all about the giveaway. It's all about seeing what can we do in order to convince people that they can't live without us, that they are dependent upon us, and that without us, they're not going to get any goodies, because we're the goodies party. We give away the goodies. But all of that is calculated, of course, to do what they always do, to create fear-mongering, demagoguery, racist rhetoric, and division, and not to mention the things that they're saying about Donald Trump, of course, that are just utterly ridiculous. In fact, I don't know whether you all saw this. They've trotted out some psychologist. Of course, this has happened. This appeared on Salon magazine, and of course, you know what Salon magazine is. I mean, it's a leftist rag. But they say that the people who support Donald Trump are, get this, quote, are infected with a contagious disease called authoritarian violence disorder. Right. They are infected with a contagious disease called authoritarian violence disorder, and that Trump is a massive super spreader. I mean, to me, it's a complete joke. It's just, these people are just ridiculous. But of course, they think people are going to buy into that, and nobody is. Come on, nobody is, because here's what it gets to, and this was the key to the Bret Baier interview, which I've had my issues with Bret Baier here in recent years, but I think this was a good showing on his part. A disaster for her, because she simply couldn't answer a single question in a direct way. But it's this. It is as if Donald Trump has been president for the last 8 years, when in fact Donald Trump left office in 2020, and these folks have been in office for, now people keep saying 3.5 years, but it's closer to 4 now. I mean, we're in the second half of October. So that November, December, they took over mid-January. So 3 years, 9 months since they were sworn in. So it's really almost 4 years at this point. But it's as if Donald Trump never left office. Every problem that we have now, he caused it. Every issue we confront, it's Donald Trump's fault. And so every time Bret Baier asked her a question, she turned to Donald Trump. In fact, she said a couple times, let's talk about Donald Trump. Let's talk about Trump. But Trump's not in office and has not been in office for 4 years. Which brings me to an overarching issue that I want to discuss today. Now, and by the way, I just made a prediction. We can't take it for granted. You got to vote. You got to get everybody you know to vote. We got to keep pressing forward And no matter what, we simply cannot let up. We're going to add some ads to our buys in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. We're going to add some buys to focus in on black men, since again that seems to be a weak point for the Kamala team, and they're all up in arms and concerned about the fact that they're not getting the love that that they think they should be getting. I love it. I love it that you've got black men saying, even some men that I would necessarily agree with on most issues, like some of these rappers, I wouldn't buy their music or listen to it, but they're saying, we're not buying Kamala Harris's shtick. we're not buying it. Of course, when they say it, it's often laced with a whole lot of profanity and all of that. But nevertheless, they're making clear, they're going to vote for Donald Trump. Listen, I am thrilled to hear it, because at least they're getting something right. And who knows, maybe there's a little hope for them overall. They get that right, maybe they'll get something else right at some point, right? But here's the overarching point that I really want to get to. And I hadn't thought about this until after the Bret Baier interview, and then sort of lacing things together. I've called the Democrat Party the Democrats, appropriate appellation, by the way. I've called them the coalition of the godless. Again, an appropriate description of who they are. But something else hit me, and not that I've never thought about it, but it kind of crystallized for me today. They are the party of denying responsibility for anything. And when I say that, I don't just mean they deny political responsibility for their policies, but I mean they are the party that teaches people to refuse to accept responsibility for their own lives. And it is a mark of American culture that we Americans, as a general cultural norm, at least up until now it has been, we're a can-do people. We're a no excuses people. We're a get it done people. Make it happen people. When I joined the Marine Corps and was in training, particularly boot camp, advanced infantry training, the attitude was, we don't make excuses, we get the job done. But that's just not a Marine Corps value. That's an American principle. That's an American ideal. Democrats don't believe that. They really do not believe that. And of course, it's if you peel it back, it's a Marxist principle, because remember, dialectical materialism, the principle of dialectical materialism is that, and historical materialism, by the way, Marxist concepts is people are victims of history and life and systems. They are not free actors on the human stage. They are victims of forces beyond their control. That people are not bad, systems make them bad. That people's decisions don't get them where they are. The system that they are in puts them where they are. That you are ultimately not responsible. That's why Karl Marx did not believe in prisons, because he believed that prisons were simply an expression of a capitalist or failed society's inability to bring out in people their inherent goodness. It's not their fault. It's society's fault. It's the system's fault. It's really a Marxist principle, but it is completely contrary to everything that Americans believe in, and everything this country has achieved has been based on individuals stepping up and saying, I can get that done. I can make that happen. I mean, do you ever watch these? I think it's on the History Channel, and my wife loves it. She kind of introduced me to it. It's on usually on Sunday afternoons, and so it's one of the things that she and I will sit down over dinner and watch on Sunday afternoons or after dinner, which is The Food That Made America. You ever, well, the guy who invented the popsicles was making them sort of for his family and his friends and all this, and he was trying to figure out, how can I make this work and sell this on a broader basis? Because he thought that the response was so enthusiastic that, you know, you could sell these on a mass scale. But he had a problem. You didn't have mass refrigeration. You didn't have a way of keeping these things frozen in order to sell them in the broader market. You know what he said? Well, then we'll have to figure out a way. Well, in other words, I got a product that I can't get to market because the refrigeration systems are not such that I can sell them in the broader market. So let's figure out how to create a refrigeration system that will keep my products frozen so that we can sell them to the broader market. I mean, that's an American attitude. He could have said, boy, it sure would be great, but you know, we just don't have the refrigeration ability right now. So, okay, let me go back and read my newspaper and smoke my pipe. You know, no, he said, we got to figure this out. Let's make this happen. That's pure Americana. That's the way we think. We don't make excuses. We make things happen. That's not what the Democrat Party is selling to Americans. They're selling, no. We Americans don't make things happen. Things happen to us. And we're going to be the party that protects you from all the things that are happening to you. And you don't have to take responsibility. We'll take care of you. We'll take care of your children. We'll take care of your household. We'll get you your food. We'll get you your health care. I mean, I want to buy me a car, buy me a house. You know, just take care of me. And the Democrats say that's exactly what we intend to do. All you have to do is surrender your sovereignty to us. All you have to do is give us power over you, and believe me, you won't have to worry about a thing. There's a word for that. It's called slavery. So let me come back and because we talk about what's going to happen, and we often talk about it in terms of policy, what's going to happen, what would happen if these bozos were to get elected. God forbid they were elected to the White House, and then they ended up in control of the Senate and the House as well, which I don't believe is going to happen. Ted Cruz apparently is in a relatively tight race, but I think Ted Cruz will pull it out. And so that the Republicans are going to take the Senate right now. That's the way it looks like the Republicans will take the Senate. If they take the Senate, the House, and the White House, then we need to get some things done. But that's all in the policy realm. But in the cultural realm, we give these Democrats these platforms, and they're going to continue to accelerate the cultural revolution that they're trying to implement in our country, which is a complete an Antonio Gramsci subversion of the values upon which this nation has been built. And one of those values is you take responsibility for your own life. You take responsibility for your own family. You take responsibility for your own work. You take responsibility for your own actions. You take responsibility for your own decisions. And you acknowledge when you mess up, and you figure out how to correct it, and you go for it, and you keep pushing, and you don't quit. I mean, some of the biggest breakthroughs in the history of mankind in this modern world have happened, most of them have happened because Americans wouldn't quit. And we weren't looking for excuses. We were looking for success. That's not what the Democrats are selling. The Democrats are not selling success. They're selling dependence. So think about this. I want to take you back. Because Kamala Harris is blaming Donald Trump for everything that's wrong, and as if he was still in office. For those of you, and most of you watching me will remember, do you remember for the first 4 years of the Obama administration, I don't think he did it much the second 4 years because you couldn't get away with it, but for the first 4 years of the Obama administration, everything that was wrong he blamed on George Bush. Everything. I mean, 1 year in, 2 years in, 3 years in, it's all Bush's fault. You don't know what I inherited. And by the way, it was liberal policies that brought us to the 2008 near collapse of the economy because of this Community Reinvestment Act and these mortgage securities that they created with these bogus mortgage securities based upon subprime loans that were being sold on the stock market and being packaged by these firms, making them look like they were cash flush and that they were healthy, when in fact it was a house of cards, because most of these loans were being made by people who couldn't pay them back. Let's make it easy. No document loans. And it was a house of cards. It was liberals who pushed all that. So the near collapse that made John McCain suspend his campaign and Barack Obama, Mr. Cool, Mr. Super Cool, oh, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. He didn't do anything either. But they were in on the negotiations, the discussions about what needed to be done. All of that was brought about by liberal policies. The liberal policies that homosexual Congressman Barney Frank was a major part of implementing. And whenever the issue was raised of the potential of a collapse because of these subprime loans coursing their way through the economy and becoming more and more a part of these major financial firms, he would always dismiss it. There's no problem. There's no problem. I remember he dismissed it. This is Republicans making up stuff. And it was the Dodd-Frank, I think, bill that in part, in large measure, created this situation. I mean, anytime you got Barney Frank's name on a bill, you can pretty much ship your saddle home, because it's But Barack Obama never took responsibility for anything, ever, except if something went good. I mean, when Osama bin Laden was killed by SEAL Team 6, you would have thought Barack Obama had rappelled from the helicopter down and gone into the compound and killed the man. What I mean? It's like he broke his arm, patting himself on the back. No responsibility for anything unless he thought it was something that made him look good. And then he had complete responsibility for it. And think about this. This is what he used to always say. He did it for 8 years. The only reason why people don't agree with me, the only reason why I'm being criticized, is because I don't look like other presidents. I mean, that folks, that's enough to make you want to dope slap somebody. And of course, I'm being metaphorical. But I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. Because A, it means I am not willing to take responsibility for my policies, and that many Americans disagree with my policies. I'm not willing to take that responsibility. No, the reason why people disagree with me is because I'm black. It has nothing to do with anything else. I mean, okay. It's not because they disagree with me on my tax policy. It's not because they disagree with me on immigration policy. It's not because they disagree with me on foreign policy. Remember the big apology tour. It's not because they disagree with me on foreign policy. It's not because they disagree with me on spending. Okay? It's not because they disagree with me on the notion of wealth redistribution. No. Those are all substantive issues. People are too stupid to disagree with me on that because, after all, I'm Barack Obama and I'm right about everything, and everybody knows that. So they've got to find. The only thing that's left is my skin color, and that's the problem. See, they're the party of irresponsibility. They're the party of no responsibility. They're the party, if you let them dominate the culture, they will teach generations yet to come, it's never your fault and you don't have to take responsibility for anything. The government will be your God and will step in and help you and correct things and change things and make everything all right. You don't have to take responsibility for who you have sex with. You can sleep around all you want. And if you have a baby, the government will make sure you can kill that baby in the womb. And anybody who doesn't want you to do that, well, they're taking away your rights and they're taking away your control over your own body. Well, you had control over your body when you slept with the man. And let's forget about rape and incest for the moment, even though these terrible things happen, and they are horrible, horrible sins and horrible things. They're an infinitesimal part of the abortion industry. Infinitesimal. And we know that Planned Parenthood was revealed to be facilitating abortions in young girls who were being used in sex trafficking. Because remember, what's the guy's name? It'll come to me. But you know, the guy was been sued a lot, had a lot of issues, who was doing undercover work and exposing these things. And he did a sting where he pretended to be a pimp and went in and acted like we got a young girl being impregnated by some of his customers, underage girls. And the Planned Parenthood representative said, wink, wink, nod, nod, no problem. You got the cash. We can take care of it. I mean, these people are just, they're morally, so morally bankrupt that hardly describes it. But what's the message? You don't have to take responsibility. We'll take care of it. We'll simply kill the baby. And poof, problem solved. And you can go sleep around again and get pregnant again and poof, problem solved. God forbid that anybody would suggest, maybe you shouldn't sleep around. Maybe you shouldn't be promiscuous. Maybe you ought to wait until marriage. Whoa. No, please. What are you doing? Are you actually bringing up the biblical standard that sex is for marriage? Are you crazy? Have you lost your mind? Yeah. I'm a fool for Christ. And guess what? That works. Doesn't it? It works. I mean, or God forbid, I know this will offend some people, but I mean, if you're going to sleep around, aren't you in control of using birth control or whatever? Oh, no. We're not going to put any responsibility on the person. We're going to shift it to the abortion clinic and let them kill the unborn baby and let the person say, see, there you go. No problem. It's madness, folks. And here's the thing. Can you imagine trying to fight World War II with that attitude rampant in our culture, with our young people believing that nothing's their fault, and when things are going poorly for them, they need safe spaces and puppy therapy and crying rooms. I mean, they've actually created all this stuff for them in some of these colleges and universities, crying rooms. As opposed to taking responsibility for their own lives and saying, okay, well, what do I need to do to improve my life? What do I need to do to make my life better? Oh, no. It's all Donald Trump's fault. It's all the fault of those mean conservatives and Republicans who are denying me. They're denying me the right to kill my unborn baby. Who do they think they are? I mean, after all, that woman that they're leading into the murder mission, she's not responsible for being pregnant. She didn't do anything. Well, yeah, I only know of one instance in which that would be true. And we all know what that is. That's the miraculous conception of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ by the Holy Spirit and the Word of God. Other than that, every woman who's ever been pregnant had to do something of a physical, sexual nature to get there. And leaving aside women who have been raped, and again, that's a tragic, horrible situation. I still don't see how punishing the baby advances the cause of justice, but that's a tragic, horrible situation. But that's not what most baby killing events are all about. They're about denying responsibility for having had sex and dealing with the consequences, which is an unwanted pregnancy. That's what they're about. That's what the party's about. The party's about denying responsibility. So Kamala Harris, it's all Donald Trump's fault. I mean, Donald Trump hasn't been in office since 2020, but it's all his fault. Everything is his fault. The open borders are his fault. I mean, she didn't even want to deal with the question of the $200 billion that we've enriched Iran. Donald Trump put the clamp on Iran. Donald Trump pulled out of that stupid nuclear deal that had lifted sanctions off Iran and was giving them a pathway to development of nuclear weapons, which we're right on the brink of that now. He pulled out of all that because he realized it was insane in the first place. They're now just basically opening up the coffers and telling Iran, yeah, do whatever you want to do. And Iran's lobbing missiles into Israel and paying terrorists around the world. And when I asked the question, well, how would you deal with this differently? Well, Donald Trump pulled out of the nuclear deal. I mean, really? This is the thing about politics. There are lots of things about politics that are ugly, but this is the thing about politics and some politicians. She would, in my view, have a better chance of winning, even though you'd probably never convince her of this because some of her Democrat base might abandon her. But where are they going to turn? Donald Trump? If she said, you know what? I served faithfully and loyally as Vice President of the United States, but there's some things I would do differently and will do differently when I'm president. She could just say that and say, and needless to say, that's true for any leader. No two leaders are going to function and govern in exactly the same way. And it would be lying to you to say that I am, because I'm a different person and some of my approaches to things are different. She could probably say that and not even get into specifics. And people would say, well, you know what? I respect that. But oh, no. On the one hand, she says on Colbert and on The View, What would you do differently than Biden? I can't think of anything offhand. But then when asked, well, then how do you not take responsibility then for where we are right now, the problems we're having economically, with inflation, with the border, with crime? Let's talk about Donald Trump. Talk about emasculation. This is the ideology of emasculation. Because true men, this is the way I was raised, true men take responsibility for their actions. And I'm not saying women don't, but I'm just saying men are wired by God to be defenders, to be protectors, to be leaders of their families. And true men know that you can't do that if you don't take responsibility for whatever circumstance you find yourself in. I mean, even if it's not of your making, you've got getting out of it, dealing with it has got to be of your making. And, it takes me back to a story that I've told, and some of you may have heard it, some of you may not. When I was about to go to Harvard Law School, I had 3 professors I approached. I can remember 2 of them. I don't remember the third. Well, I might, actually. But I approached them to ask for letters of recommendation because I wanted to go to law school. And I told them I was shooting for Harvard Law School. And by the way, one of those professors was a graduate of Harvard Law School. And they said to me, all of them said the same thing. I wouldn't shoot for Harvard Law School if I were you because black people don't do well on standardized tests. They're culturally biased. See, so basically what they're saying is you're going to fail, but it's not your fault. But the way I was raised by a man was, well, wait a minute. Wait. Oh, I'm not a victim. I get to say whether I can do well at a particular thing. Don't tell me I can't do well at it because it's culturally biased. What does that mean anyway? I mean, I knew my history in the country goes back. My ancestors have been here at least 200 years, probably longer than that. But that's as far back as I go. My great-grandfather was born in Virginia in 1798, the year before George Washington died. I said, I think I got the culture. But it's this idea, well, you're raised in the ghetto. You don't understand this white culture. Give me a break. So having heard that, I said, well, I appreciate the heads up. And I just doubled down and said, well, I'll show you. And then I went and started doing research on the LSATs and how they're governed and how they work and how they're implemented and and all of that. And then I found out you could take practice exams. I started taking practice LSAT exams and timing myself and scoring myself. And I did that, I don't know how long before I took the LSAT, but it had to be months. I mean, when I walked in to take the LSATs, I walked in with a sense of absolute confidence because I knew what I was walking into. I prepared myself. I guess I should thank them for having told me I wouldn't do well because I'm black, that it convinced me that I better find out what this test is all about and make sure that when I walk in there, I know exactly what I'm doing. I mean, please, culturally biased, give me a break. It's about analytical ability. It's about grasping facts. It's about reading comprehension. It's about logic. I mean, come on. Either you have those things or you don't. It has nothing to do with culture. But what they were telling me is, don't take responsibility because it's not your fault. You can't. You can't do it because after all, see, that's the ideology of failure, isn't it? You and I wouldn't be experiencing anything we experience in the modern world if entrepreneurs and inventors and scientists and visionaries hadn't imagined things and then said, when told, well, you can't do that. Well, yes, we can. Yes, we can. We're going to do it. We're going to get it done. Yeah, but that won't work. Well, yes, it will. You can't make that work. Yes, I can. We cannot allow the culture of failure to take root in our country, because that's what that is. That's the culture of failure. You know, when you think about it, that's what communism does to people. It basically teaches people that your life is not in your own hands, it's in ours. And your only job in life is to do what you're told, to do what you're assigned, to fit into this great wheel of communism, of Marxism. And if you will do that, things will go well with you because we will make sure they go well with you. And if you don't do that, things will go poorly with you because we will make sure that things go poorly with you. Our culture has been a meritocracy. They want to turn it into a Marxistocracy. From each according to his ability to each according to his need. And everybody has needs, and pretty much nobody has any ability except what we tell them they have. And so everybody's equally miserable. I just wanted to get that out there. So this election is not merely about politics and policy. This election is about the future of American culture and what kind of culture we are. I mean, Donald Trump is a can-do type of person, right? I mean, you kick him off Twitter, you kick him out of social media. Donald Trump says, well, I'll start my own media company. I'll start my own social media company. Now it's trading on the New York Stock Exchange, and he's richer than he's ever been. That's the mindset of a can-do person, of a person who says, I'm not making excuses. I mean, I'm not going to go curl up in a fetal position in the corner somewhere. Oh, they won't let me. I mean, that's why this podcast exists. Because, frankly, the mainstream media, they've tried to shut me out. Well, you can't shut me out. And you can't shut me down because I'm not quitting. I'm not going anywhere. So I'll create my own platform. I'm not going to sit around and ask you to give me one. I'll create my own. I won't whine and moan about what they won't do. Now, I'm certainly going to point out their unfairness and point out their lack of respect for the Constitution and for free speech. I told you, I got 2 radio stations in Georgia don't want to run our ads. 2 gospel radio stations. I put gospel in quotation marks because they're about as much gospel as the Quran is gospel. I mean, again, WPZE got the nerve to turn down the ad in which we said, vote your Christian values. Oh, we're not running that. Because they don't want them to vote their Christian values. They want them to vote their demonic values. Whereas we'll play all kinds of gospel music and have you clapping and then go out and follow Satan. But do it with a smile on your face and do it clapping to the beat of the music. It's disgusting, frankly. In fact, they had the nerve to say to me, we will not do business with Stand. I guess my reputation precedes me. So you know what we're doing? We're advertising on 6 or 7 other gospel stations. You think we're going to quit because they won't? I mean, look, I don't deny that human beings are faced with circumstances not of our own making. Like if I had my druthers, they would have to carry, and by the way, we're filing complaints with the Federal Communications Commission over what we consider to be a violation of our First Amendment rights. We'll see where that goes, whether they do have the authority to just willy-nilly just turn people down, particularly in election season, but I don't think they do. I have not practiced in that area for a long time. I used to teach regulatory law, and I taught about the Federal Communications Commission. It's been a long time since I've done that. So I'm not sure where the laws and the regulations are now, but I'll tell you one thing, we're going to challenge it. But in the meantime, we're not quitting. We're not rolling over. But that's the mindset of the Democrat Party. Just roll over and we'll scoop you up and we'll take care of you. Rock-a-bye, baby, in the treetops. That's what they do. They infantilize people. Turn you into a sniveling baby. Why is the border open, Kamala Harris? Let's talk about Donald Trump. And you want to be president of the United States? I don't know whether you all remember this. I was alive at the time, but I wasn't cognizant of politics at the time. I shouldn't say really remember this, but I'm sure most of you know about it. John Kennedy, well, Democrats were different then. After the Bay of Pigs debacle, came before the American people and took responsibility, even though it was something that was being planned before he became president. He went along with it. But he didn't come to the American people when the whole thing went south. They just, forgive me, Southerners, I'm a Southerner myself now, when the whole thing just went off, because going south is a negative thing, and I think going south is a positive thing. But he didn't come say, oh, my generals, they misled me. It was not my fault. I didn't know. I didn't understand. Nobody told me. He just came and said, I am president of the United States. I made a bad decision. Essentially, it's my fault. I take responsibility for it. And I've learned a lesson from it. And the American people loved it. Just thought, wow. Now that's refreshing. Here's a president saying, like Truman, again, these are Democrats. I'm pointing this out because what a sea change. Remember Truman? The buck stops here. In other words, I don't pass the buck. This is where it stops. Truman made the decision to drop the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and he said he wrestled with the decision, but once he made it, he never lost another night's sleep. He said, because I realized I had to take responsibility for my decision. It was made, it was done, it was over. Now you got these people who, nothing is their fault. How in the world are you going to govern the greatest nation on earth, the biggest economy on earth, the most influential nation on earth, still, in spite of all the efforts China's making to supplant us? How are you going to govern a country like this? You won't even take responsibility for the 4 years you've been in office. Why should we trust you with 4 years as head of state for our country when you can't take responsibility for the 4 years you've been second in command? Bragging about, I was the last person in the room when this decision was made and when that decision was made. And she's casting tie votes for legislation. But oh, no. Nothing's my fault. It's all Donald Trump. She had the nerve to say, when Bret Baier said, but wait a minute, but you've been in office for 3.5 years. She said, but Donald Trump has been talking for 10 years. What? What? I mean, really? Donald Trump's been talking for 10 years and that's your excuse? I'll tell you what, I didn't raise my children that way. My daddy didn't raise me that way. I don't want my granddaughter to be raised that way. I don't want the American people to think that way, because that, folks, is the death knell of our nation's prosperity and strength and power. When we reach the point where we're no longer a can-do people, but we're we can't people. And we're no longer people who take responsibility and say, let's get it done. We now say, well, we can't get it done because they won't let us. It's over anyway at that point. I mean, once that happens, it's over anyway. So we can't let that happen, right? We can't turn our country over to people who won't take responsibility for the time that they've already been in office. We simply can't do that. I predict if we do our job now, it depends on us, that Donald Trump's going to win by 4 points, 52-48. That's my prediction. I don't have a prediction yet on the Electoral College count, but I'm going to get you that. I'm going to think through that and tell you where I think this thing is going to land, and then we'll see. I'm just kind of doing it for fun. As long as he wins, I don't care if he wins by a scintilla of a percentage point, as long as he wins. But I'm predicting he's going to win by 4 points. And I'm predicting also there's going to be an historic black vote for Donald Trump, that he's going to get at least 20%. I'm shooting for 25, but he's going to get between 20 and 25% of the black vote. That's my prediction. Now, of course, again, that's where we are now. We don't know what these idiots are going to trot out between now and then. I mean, they'll have Donald Trump in blackface, and they'll have Donald Trump wearing a Ku Klux Klan hood, and who knows what they'll do. That's why we've got to keep plugging anyway. Go to our website, standamericapac.us, standamericapac.us, and give whatever you can to help us to keep running these ads. I said we're preparing to run some additional ads directed at black men. Since that really seems to be a weak spot for her, we want to exploit that to the fullest extent possible and make black men even more determined to vote for a man who is going to stand up for what he believes in and follow through on what he believes in, as opposed to a woman who doesn't know whether she's black or Indian, who doesn't know what a man is and what a woman is, who doesn't know whether she's for immigration or for a wall or against. Please, no. And I'm not saying that because she's a woman. I'm saying that because that's the kind of person that she is. Because I've never said I wouldn't vote for a woman for president. I mean, my goodness, look at Margaret Thatcher. Who knows who God will bring along. I've never said I wouldn't vote for a woman for president. I said I wouldn't vote for godless people for president. I wouldn't vote for an atheist. I wouldn't vote for a Hindu. I wouldn't vote for a Muslim. I wouldn't vote for a Buddhist for president. But that's a different matter. Let me not get off on that topic. I want a president who's going to take responsibility for his own actions. And I know Donald Trump will do that. Donald Trump defends tariffs because he was in office for 4 years and they worked. The tariffs are the end of the world. Well, he used them. And the Biden administration kept them in place. She didn't want to answer that. Well, why'd you keep the tariffs in place if they're so bad? Well, let's talk about Donald Trump's been that Donald Trump's been talking for the last 10 years. I mean, if it weren't so tragic, it would really be hilarious. It really would be. More so tragic that this woman is even in a position, even to be within striking distance of the presidency, is tragic for our country. I gotta go. I'm over time already. So God bless each and every one of you. You know what to do. Stand up, step up, speak up, refuse to back up, because we cannot be defeated if we will not quit, because we are on God's side. God bless everybody.